Roughly 60% of perennials marketed as low maintenance become invasive, root-bound, or disease-prone within 18 months once they are placed in containers. 9 specific plants, top cooperative extension complaint lists nationwide, and a 2014 nursery industry memo obtained through the Freedom of Information Act suggests the labels were designed to hide exactly that. The evidence trail begins with 5 years of clinic data and 4 categories of failure most gardeners never hear about. Every year, thousands of gardeners turn to cooperative extension plant clinics for help with perennials that were sold as effortless. 5 state clinics, Pennsylvania, Texas, Washington, Illinois, and Virginia, serve as the backbone of this investigation, each maintaining detailed diagnostic logs that go far beyond the average complaint. These clinics do not just track whether a plant survives, they systematically record the reason for every sample submission, sorting problems into 4 main categories: disease, invasive spread, root binding or container failure, and abiotic stress such as drought or nutrient deficiency. Within these records, herbaceous ornamentals, perennials grown for foliage or flowers, make up about 18 to 22% of all submissions. That is a significant share, considering the sheer variety of plants homeowners bring in. Each sample is coded by both plant type and diagnosis, so the data can be filtered by species, container use, and the specific issue that triggered the complaint. For example, a mint plant with powdery mildew gets tagged under both disease and culinary herb, while a yarrow that has outgrown its pot is logged as root-bound under ornamental perennial. The 4 diagnostic categories used by these clinics are not arbitrary. Disease covers everything from foliar fungi to root rot, often confirmed by lab testing. Invasive spread is flagged when a plant escapes its container or sends runners into lawns and beds with notes on the extent of the problem. Root binding and container failure refer to cases where a plant's roots have filled the pot, sometimes cracking the container or stunting the plant's growth. Abiotic stress includes non-living causes such as poor drainage, heat damage, or fertilizer burn. Each clinic's annual report breaks down the proportion of samples falling into these categories, revealing patterns that would not be visible from a single homeowner's experience. To approximate the real-world risk behind the low-maintenance label, researchers constructed proxy metrics from these logs. They measured the percent of ornamental samples that received a problem diagnosis, tracked the number of invasive species complaints, and counted how often root binding or container failure appeared in the notes. Seasonal trends also emerged. Most container failures and disease outbreaks peaked 8 to 12 months after spring planting, matching the timeline when many perennials begin to outgrow their pots or succumb to pathogens in confined soil. The data from these 5 clinics provide a rare window into the hidden costs of container gardening. They show that the risks associated with so-called lazy perennials are not just anecdotal, but documented across multiple states and growing conditions. By relying on coded diagnostic categories and multi-year logs, these clinics act as impartial investigators, capturing the gap between marketing promises and the realities that surface when plants are confined to pots. In 2014, a confidential memorandum circulated among the leadership of the National Nursery Association and its regional affiliates. The document, later obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, outlined a clear objective: delay the addition of certain perennials, specifically bishop's weed and gooseneck loosestrife, to state invasive species watch lists. The memo's language was careful, emphasizing the need for a cost-benefit analysis before any regulatory action and warning of the potential loss of $3 to $5 million in annual sales if these plants were blacklisted. It cited the plant's long-standing reputation for low-maintenance appeal and referenced internal sales data showing their popularity with senior gardeners and first-time homeowners. The timing of the memo coincided with a surge in complaints logged by state horticulture boards and cooperative extension clinics, particularly from homeowners struggling to control aggressive spread in container plantings. Despite mounting evidence from diagnostic clinics, the nursery lobby pressed for a pause, arguing that the risk of invasive escape was overstated and that container use should exempt these species from broader restrictions. In one passage, the memo described container gardening as a mitigating practice, even as extension agents recorded cases of rhizomes escaping through drainage holes and causing costly property damage. No public archive existed for this correspondence until a group of consumer advocates filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the Ohio Department of Agriculture. The released documents included not only the original memo, but also email threads between trade group representatives and state regulators. These exchanges reveal a coordinated effort to shape the public narrative around low-maintenance perennials, with talking points distributed to retailers and press releases issued by major chains. One press release from 2017 quoted a company horticulturist claiming, without peer-reviewed evidence, that gooseneck loosestrife posed no risk when grown in a 10-gallon pot. The existence of the 2014 memo and the strategy it set in motion complicates the story behind those glossy plant tags and cheerful catalog descriptions. It raises questions about whose interests are served when a plant is labeled as easy or carefree. For gardeners relying on these assurances, the paper trail hints at a deeper pattern, industry voices working behind the scenes to protect sales, even as the burden of containment and remediation falls on homeowners. As the documentary turns to the 9 highlighted perennials, this context lingers in the background, inviting viewers to look beyond the marketing and consider the forces that shape what ends up in their pots. Mint, sold as the go-to kitchen herb, quickly outgrows its welcome in containers. Within 2 years, rhizomes fill a 10-liter pot, pushing so hard that ceramic planters sometimes crack. One Texas gardener found her 12-inch pot split wide open, mint stolons already stretching across the patio. Clinic logs from Missouri and Pennsylvania record dozens of mint samples ruined by powdery mildew, leaves spotted, wilted, and unusable. Even in pots, mint demands constant dividing and repotting just to stay manageable. BEE Balm, celebrated for attracting pollinators and crowned Perennial Plant of the Year in 2003, fares no better. Its fibrous roots quickly overrun containers, and humid summers bring near certain powdery mildew. Illinois and Pennsylvania clinics report up to 40% of container bee balm samples with severe leaf loss. Gardeners face a relentless cycle of thinning, fungicide, and annual division, nothing like the carefree image on the tag. Chinese lantern, with its bright orange pods, is pitched as an easy autumn accent, but shallow stolons and tuberous roots can overrun a 7-gallon pot in one season. Extension notes warn of root rot after the first winter if drainage is poor. 5% of Virginia's Phasaelis samples were diagnosed with root rot. Obedient plant promises tidy clumps but delivers dense rhizomes that double each year. Reports from Virginia describe pots cracking or tipping as roots expand. Runner shoots escape through drainage holes and invade lawns, prompting recommendations to move plants to raised beds after one winter. Bishop's weed variegatum spreads aggressively and brings legal headaches. In one Ohio neighborhood, a homeowners association lawsuit over uncontrolled spread led to a $12,000 remediation bill. Lily of the Valley, with its sweet fragrance and delicate white bells, conceals a toxic legacy. Every part of the plant contains cardiac glycosides, compounds that can trigger vomiting, a slowed heart rate, and, in rare cases, hospitalization if ingested. Poison control centers across the U.S. handle about 30 calls a year for accidental ingestion, most involving young children or pets. In one Pennsylvania case, a 4-year-old was rushed to the emergency room after chewing several leaves, prompting the local clinic to urge families to remove the plant from homes with children. Yarrow, often praised for its resilience, brings a different kind of trouble. Its taproot can drive straight through the bottom of a shallow pot, cracking ceramic or plastic containers after as little as 18 months. A North Carolina gardener faced a $75 replacement bill when a yarrow's root mass split her patio planter. Extension guidelines now recommend deep, wide pots and regular division every 2 or 3 years to prevent container failure. But these steps add unexpected work for anyone hoping for a hands-off plant. Japanese anemone offers late-season color but demands vigilance. Its creeping rhizomes double in length each year, and even the smallest fragment left behind during repotting can regenerate, leading to years of volunteer shoots. In Virginia, about 20% of container-grown anemone samples submitted to the plant clinic showed botrytis, gray mold, by late summer. The disease leaves flower heads covered in fuzzy spores, often requiring fungicide or immediate removal to keep it from spreading. Gooseneck loosestrife, sold as a graceful filler for shade, can turn into a financial hazard. In Michigan, a single container-grown plant sent runners through a neighbor's flower bed, resulting in a $4,500 remediation bill and a formal complaint to the state horticulture board. Despite mounting complaints, industry lobbying delayed its addition to invasive watch lists. The 2014 internal memo obtained through a public records request reveals a calculated effort by nursery trade groups to slow regulation, citing millions in annual sales and urging regulators to exempt container-grown specimens. The memo's language that container gardening is a mitigating practice contrasts sharply with the reality recorded by extension agents, cracked pots, legal disputes, and the hidden burden of so-called low-maintenance perennials. Today, plant tags still promise effortless beauty, yet over half of these so-called lazy perennials become high-maintenance headaches in pots, from invasive mint roots to toxic lily of the valley. The real risk is not ignorance, it is misplaced trust. Smart gardening starts with skepticism, not slogans. Share your experiences below.